The spring sun cast long shadows across the cracked pavement as Blake Harrison's sleek Audi pulled up to the weathered brick apartment building in South Boston. Through designer sunglasses, he surveyed the modest structure with a real estate developer's practiced eye, mentally cataloging the necessary renovations that would significantly increase the property's value. Blake straightened his custom Italian suit and checked his Rolex. He had exactly 20 minutes before his next meeting downtown. 20 minutes to handle what should have been a simple matter delegated to his property management team. But apartment 302 had been a persistent problem. 3 months of unpaid rent and no response to notices. As the newest addition to his growing real estate portfolio, Blake had decided to make a personal visit. Sometimes the personal touch was necessary. "Let's get this over with," he muttered, striding purposefully toward the entrance. The building's interior was dated but clean. Blake noted the well-maintained communal areas as he climbed to the third floor, his Oxford shoes echoing in the stairwell. His firm had acquired this building just 2 months ago, and he was already contemplating its potential for upscale conversion in this rapidly gentrifying neighborhood. Standing before apartment 302, Blake took a deep breath and knocked firmly. He heard the shuffling of small feet and muffled childish voices behind the door. "Just a minute," called a woman's voice, a voice that sent an unexpected shiver of recognition down Blake's spine. The door opened and time seemed to stand still. "Blake?" The color drained from Olivia Mitchell's face as she stood frozen in the doorway. 5 years had passed since he'd last seen her. 5 years since she had disappeared from his life without explanation during their final year at Boston University. Her chestnut hair was shorter now, her face more defined, but her expressive hazel eyes were unmistakable, the same eyes that had once looked at him with unrestrained love and admiration. "Olivia," he managed, his carefully composed business demeanor crumbling. Before either could say another word, 3 small children, identical in every way, appeared behind her, clutching at the fabric of her worn jeans. They were approximately 4 years old, with familiar dark curls and striking blue eyes. His eyes. The recognition was instantaneous and jarring. "Mommy, who's that?" asked one of the children, peering curiously at Blake. Olivia's hand flew to her mouth as tears welled in her eyes. "Please," she whispered, "I just need 1 more month. I lost my job at the design firm, but I have 2 interviews next week. I promise I'll catch up on the payments." Blake stood paralyzed, unable to process the implications of what he was seeing. The children, 3 identical boys, continued to stare at him with innocent curiosity. His mind raced with calculations that had nothing to do with property values or investment returns. "These are," he began, struggling to form the question. "My sons," Olivia answered, placing protective hands on their shoulders. Then, meeting his gaze directly, she added in a barely audible voice, "Our sons." The hallway seemed to tilt beneath Blake's feet. Without another word, he turned and walked rapidly toward the stairs, his heart pounding in his chest. He could hear Olivia calling after him, but her voice seemed distant, drowned out by the rushing in his ears. In the safety of his car, Blake gripped the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. His meticulously planned life, the empire he had built after graduating, the strategic business decisions, the carefully cultivated image, suddenly felt hollow in the face of this revelation. He was a father to 3 boys who had existed for years without his knowledge. Blake's phone buzzed incessantly. His executive assistant, his business partner, his fiancée Vanessa, the daughter of one of Boston's most influential families, all demanding his attention. He ignored them all, staring instead at the apartment building where his children lived. That evening, instead of attending the charity gala where he was meant to receive an award for his contributions to urban development, Blake sat in his penthouse overlooking the Boston skyline, a glass of scotch untouched beside him. He had spent hours researching. Birth records confirmed the existence of Alexander, Ethan, and Noah Mitchell, born 4 years and 2 months ago at Massachusetts General Hospital. No father listed. For a man who prided himself on control, on planning every aspect of his life and business ventures, this blindside left him reeling. Why had Olivia kept this from him? What kind of person disappeared with someone's children? Yet even as anger surged, he remembered his younger self. Ambitious, obsessed with success, determined to prove himself after growing up with nothing. Over the next week, Blake found himself driving past the apartment, building at odd hours, watching from a distance as Olivia hurried the boys to what he assumed was preschool before rushing to catch the tea. Later, he would see her return in a different outfit, evidence of a second job. One evening, he followed, discreetly as she picked up the children from a daycare center, took them to a small playground, then to a diner where she worked the evening shift. The children sat at a corner booth, coloring and doing simple puzzles while their mother served customers. Blake's fiancée, Vanessa Wells, grew increasingly frustrated with his distraction and sudden cancellations. "What's going on with you?" she demanded during a tense dinner at her parents' Beacon Hill home. "The fundraiser for Daddy's campaign is this weekend, and you've barely said 2 words about it." "Just dealing with some unexpected issues with the South Boston property," he replied vaguely, pushing food around his plate. On a rainy Sunday morning, Blake made a decision. He walked into a toy store and purchased 3 identical remote control cars, the kind he had always wanted as a child but could never afford, along with educational books and art supplies. He left the packages anonymously at their door with an envelope containing enough cash to cover the overdue rent and 3 months in advance. That night, as he lay awake beside a sleeping Vanessa, Blake stared at the ceiling, confronting a truth he had been avoiding. His perfectly orchestrated life had just become infinitely more complicated, and for the first time in years, the path forward wasn't clear. 2 weeks after the shocking encounter, Blake sat in his downtown office, pretending to focus on architectural plans for his newest development project. Instead, his thoughts continually drifted to Olivia and the boys. He had hired a private investigator, discreetly, of course, to fill in the gaps of the past 5 years. The report sat in front of him now. Olivia had moved frequently during her pregnancy, eventually settling in South Boston 2 years ago. She had completed her design degree online while working multiple jobs. Currently, she worked mornings at a marketing firm as a junior designer, evenings at a diner, and weekends doing freelance graphic design. The investigator noted her reputation as a dedicated mother who somehow managed to attend every school event, despite her punishing schedule. Blake's intercom buzzed. "Mr. Harrison, Ms. Wells is here to see you." He quickly tucked the report into a drawer. "Send her in." Vanessa entered, immaculately dressed in a designer suit that emphasized her willowy frame. Her blonde hair was styled in a perfect chignon, not a strand out of place. Everything about her screamed old money and careful curation. "I thought we could have lunch," she said, leaning across his desk to kiss him. "Daddy wants to discuss the wedding venue options." The wedding? Their engagement party was just 6 weeks away, with the wedding planned for the fall, a social event that would unite 2 of Boston's most prominent families. The Wells family's political connections combined with Blake's business acumen would create a powerful dynasty. "I can't today," Blake replied, avoiding her gaze. "I need to check on the South Boston property." Vanessa's perfectly shaped eyebrows arched in suspicion. "Again? You've been obsessed with that place lately. It's just a small building in your portfolio." "There are some structural issues I want to address personally." "Since when do you handle structural issues? That's what you pay people for." She perched on the edge of his desk. "Blake, you've been distant for weeks. The wedding planner needs decisions, and you keep canceling our appointments." Blake felt a flash of irritation. "Some things are more important than napkin colors, Vanessa." Her eyes narrowed. "Like what? Your business has always come first. That's what I admired about you. Your focus, your drive. Now suddenly you're distracted all the time." The phone rang, saving Blake from responding. Vanessa sighed dramatically and stood. "Fine, have dinner with my parents tonight, 7 o'clock. Don't be late." She left in a cloud of expensive perfume. That afternoon, Blake found himself once again near Olivia's apartment building. He watched as she emerged with the 3 boys, their small backpacks bouncing as they raced ahead of her toward the playground across the street. Without thinking, Blake followed at a distance. The boys were energetic and clever, organizing an elaborate game involving imaginary dragons and knights. Blake noticed how different their personalities were despite their identical appearance. One was clearly the leader, another the peacemaker, and the third more contemplative and observant. The quiet one spotted Blake first, tugging at Olivia's sleeve and pointing. Olivia froze when she saw him, then asked the boys to play on the swings while she approached Blake cautiously. "Are you stalking us now?" she asked, her voice low and tense. "We need to talk," Blake replied simply. They sat on a bench, maintaining a careful distance between them. For several minutes, neither spoke, watching the children play. "Why didn't you tell me?" Blake finally asked, his voice strained with contained emotion. Olivia's hands fidgeted in her lap. "You remember that night I came to your apartment? You were on the phone with your mentor." Blake frowned, trying to recall. "You said, and I quote, 'Kids aren't in my 10-year plan. I'm not wasting my potential on diapers and daycare when I could be building something that lasts.' I had just found out I was pregnant that morning with triplets." The memory hit Blake like a physical blow. He had been speaking to his business mentor, outlining his ambitious plans for the decade ahead. "You could have still told me," he insisted. "To what end? So you could resent us for derailing your grand plans? Or worse, try to convince me not to have them?" Olivia's voice cracked. "You were laser-focused on becoming a success. Nothing was going to stand in your way." "That wasn't your decision to make," Blake said, anger rising. "They're my children too." "Yes, they are," Olivia acknowledged quietly. "And I've made plenty of mistakes, but I did what I thought was best at the time. By disappearing, by struggling, alone, by depriving them of their father. I didn't want to be an obligation," she replied. "The reluctant family man wasn't the role I wanted for you, and it certainly wasn't what I wanted for my children." Blake watched as one of the boys, Ethan, he thought, helped his brother after a minor fall. The gentle care in the child's movements stirred something profound in his chest. "What did you tell them about me?" he asked. "That their daddy was someone I loved in college, but we went separate ways." She hesitated. "I have pictures of you I've shown them. I never spoke badly of you. I promised myself I wouldn't do that." The thought of his son seeing photographs of him, knowing of his existence but never meeting him, sent a sharp pain through Blake's heart. "I want to know them," he stated firmly. "I have rights." "Legal rights you could enforce." "Yes," Olivia agreed, surprising him with her calmness. "But these are children, not a business acquisition. They need stability and love, not a custody battle." Blake watched the boys playing, his sons, with his eyes and his chin, and possibly his temperament. "I'm not looking to fight you in court. Olivia, I need to be part of their lives." Olivia studied him carefully. "The anonymous gifts and the rent money? That was you?" He nodded. "I should have known," she said with a small smile. "The remote control cars were a bit extravagant for 4-year-olds. I always wanted one as a kid," Blake admitted. "My mom could never afford it." A moment of shared understanding passed between them, a reminder of how they had once connected. Over their similar backgrounds, both scholarship students determined to create better lives for themselves. "I have conditions," Olivia finally said. "You don't just walk into their lives and then disappear when it gets complicated, or when it interferes with your perfect life, with your socialite fiancé." Blake winced at the accuracy of her assessment. "I wouldn't do that." "Wouldn't you? What does Vanessa Wells think about instant fatherhood to triplets? How do they fit with your image as Boston's golden boy developer?" The questions struck uncomfortably close to home. Blake hadn't told Vanessa, hadn't told anyone about the children. He had been avoiding the inevitable collision of his two worlds. "I don't have all the answers right now," he admitted, "but I know I want to be their father. A real father, not just a name or a financial supporter." As if on cue, the quietest of the triplets approached them, his observant blue eyes, Blake's eyes, moving between the adults. "Mommy," he said, "is this the man from the pictures?" Olivia's gaze met Blake's, silently communicating the weight of the moment. "Yes, Noah," she said gently. "This is Mr. Harrison. He's an old friend of Mommy's." Noah extended his small hand with surprising formality. "Nice to meet you, Mr. Harrison." As Blake carefully shook his son's hand, feeling the delicate bones beneath the soft skin, something fundamental shifted within him. The carefully constructed walls between his past and present, between the boy from a struggling single-parent home and the successful man he had become, began to crumble. "The pleasure is all mine," Blake responded, his voice betraying the emotion he fought to control. Months had passed since Blake's first real conversation with his sons. Every Saturday morning now belonged to Alexander, Ethan, and Noah. Trips to the Children's Museum, the aquarium, or simply the local park. Blake found himself looking forward to these outings with an eagerness that surprised him, scheduling his week around these precious hours. Today, they were at the Franklin Park Zoo. Blake watched as the boys pressed their faces against the glass of the penguin exhibit, their excitement palpable. Noah, the quietest and most observant of the three, stood, slightly apart, methodically documenting each animal with a small notepad and colored pencils Blake had bought him after discovering his artistic talent. "Mr. Blake," Alexander called, always the leader, "can penguins fly underwater?" Blake smiled at the thoughtful question. "They don't fly exactly, but they're amazing swimmers. Their wings have evolved into flippers." "Evolved?" Ethan repeated, testing the unfamiliar word. "It means they changed over a very long time to become better at swimming," Blake explained, kneeling to their level, something that had become second nature over the past weeks. "Like how you changed to become our friend?" Noah asked unexpectedly, looking up from his drawing with those penetrating blue eyes. The innocent question caught Blake off guard. He and Olivia had agreed to introduce him gradually into their lives as a friend before revealing the truth about his identity. The perceptiveness of the boys, particularly Noah, continually amazed him. "Something like that," he managed to respond, ruffling Noah's hair gently. His phone vibrated in his pocket, again. Blake checked it discreetly. 15 missed calls from Vanessa and her father, Senator Wells. The engagement party was tonight, and he had promised to attend the morning planning session at the Wells Beacon Hill mansion. He had completely forgotten, in his excitement about the zoo trip. "Everything okay?" Olivia approached, carrying drinks and snacks for the boys. Blake nodded quickly, silencing his phone. "Everything's fine." The concerned look in her eyes told him she wasn't convinced, but she didn't press the issue in front of the children. Later, as the boys explored the butterfly garden, Olivia pulled him aside. "You should go, I can tell something's wrong." "Nothing's wrong," Blake insisted. "I just have a work commitment I'm missing." "On a Saturday?" Olivia raised an eyebrow. "Blake, we agreed to be honest with each other." He sighed, running a hand through his perfectly styled hair, a nervous habit from his youth that he thought he'd outgrown. "It's my engagement party tonight. There was a planning brunch this morning." Olivia's expression remained carefully neutral, but Blake could see the flash of hurt in her eyes. Despite their complicated past, they had developed a tentative friendship over the past month, bonding over their shared love for the boys. Blake had found himself increasingly drawn to the warmth of Olivia's small apartment, to the organized chaos of family dinners and bedtime stories, so different from the sterile perfection of his luxury penthouse. "You should go," Olivia repeated, more firmly this time. "Your fiancé must be wondering where you are." "The boys, we'll be fine. We've had 4 years of zoo trips without you," she said, instantly regretting the words when she saw his face fall. "I'm sorry. That wasn't fair." Blake checked his watch. "I'll stay until lunch, then I have to go." The rest of the morning passed in a blur of animal exhibits and childish laughter, but the carefree atmosphere had evaporated. When it was time to leave, Blake knelt to say goodbye to the boys, his heart constricting as they enthusiastically hugged him, a recent development that filled him with both joy and guilt. "Will you come read us bedtime stories tonight?" Ethan asked hopefully. "Not tonight, buddy. I have an important meeting." The word party seemed inappropriate somehow. "Is it because of the fancy lady?" Alexander asked innocently. Blake froze. "What fancy lady?" "The one in the magazine." "With you, Mommy has the picture. She looked at it yesterday." Blake's eyes met Olivia's over the boys' heads. She blushed furiously. "The Boston magazine piece about up-and-coming power couples," she explained hurriedly. "It was in the waiting room at the boys' pediatrician. Alexander has an exceptional memory for images. The distance between his two worlds suddenly felt vast and unbridgeable. In one world, he was featured in glossy magazines with Vanessa, attending galas and business functions. In the other, he was learning to cut sandwiches into dinosaur shapes and discovering that Ethan was allergic to strawberries. After a subdued goodbye, Blake drove directly to the Wells estate, changing into his tuxedo in the car. He arrived to find Senator James Wells pacing the marble foyer. "Where the hell have you been?" the senator demanded. "The caterers needed final approval, and Vanessa has been beside herself." "I apologize, Senator. A property emergency required my personal attention." The older man's stern expression softened slightly. "It's that commitment to business that makes you a worthy match for my daughter. But remember, Blake, when you marry Vanessa, you're joining the Wells family. Our priorities become your priorities." "Of course, sir," Blake responded automatically, though the words felt hollow. The engagement party was everything Boston high society expected: elegant, extravagant, and exclusive. Blake moved through the evening mechanically, accepting congratulations from business associates and political figures, all eager to align themselves with the future son-in-law of Senator Wells. "There you are," Vanessa appeared at his side during a rare moment alone on the terrace. She looked stunning in a designer gown, diamonds glittering at her throat. "You've been avoiding me all night." "I haven't been avoiding you," Blake protested. "I've been talking to your father's campaign donors as requested." Vanessa studied him over the rim of her champagne flute. "Something's changed. You've been different for weeks now." "I've just been busy with the South Boston project." "The same project that made you miss our engagement brunch?" Her tone sharpened. "Blake, my father is announcing his Presidential Exploratory Committee next month. We need to present a united front. This distracted behavior needs to stop." Presidential Exploratory Committee. The words hit Blake like a splash of cold water. Senator Wells had greater ambitions than he'd realized, which meant even more scrutiny of his family, including his future son-in-law. "I understand," Blake said quietly. "I'll be more present." Vanessa's expression softened. She reached up to straighten his tie in a gesture that was both intimate and possessive. "That's all I ask. We're building something special together, Blake. The perfect power couple, remember?" The party continued late into the night. Around midnight, Blake excused himself to use the restroom, seeking a moment of solitude. In the ornate powder room, he splashed water on his face and stared at his reflection. The immaculate tuxedo, the carefully styled hair, the poised expression. It was the image he had worked so hard to cultivate. His phone chimed with a text message from Olivia. The boys wanted to say goodnight. Attached was a photo of Alexander, Ethan, and Noah, in their matching pajamas, holding up a crayon drawing of what appeared to be Blake, standing with them at the zoo. The simple caption read, "To Mr. Blake from Noah, Alex, and Ethan." Something broke inside Blake as he stared at the image. Without thinking, he saved it as his phone's wallpaper, replacing the professional headshot that had been there before. Returning to the party, Blake found Vanessa deep in conversation with her father and several prominent donors. She beckoned him over with a practiced smile. "There he is. We were just discussing your brilliant development project in the Seaport District. Tell Senator Mitchell about the sustainable elements you've incorporated." Blake began his well-rehearsed pitch, but his mind kept returning to the drawing from his sons. Halfway through his explanation of energy-efficient designs, Vanessa reached for his phone to show a rendering of the building and froze when she saw his new wallpaper. "Who are these children?" she asked, her voice dangerously quiet. The conversation around them stilled. Blake felt all eyes turn to him, including the sharp gaze of Senator Wells. Blake hesitated, standing at the precipice between his carefully constructed life and the truth. "They're my sons." The shocked silence that followed seemed to stretch eternally. Vanessa's face cycled through confusion, disbelief, and finally, anger. "You're what?" she hissed, keeping her voice low despite her obvious fury. "Perhaps we should discuss this privately," Senator Wells suggested, his politician's instincts for damage control kicking in as he noted the interested expressions of nearby guests. "There's nothing to discuss," Vanessa snapped, thrusting the phone back at Blake. "Either you're lying now or you've been lying all along. Which is it?" Blake looked from Vanessa to her father, seeing not hurt, but calculation in their eyes, assessing the potential political damage, the scandal, the optics. In that moment, Blake realized with startling clarity that while he had been worrying about how his two worlds would collide, he had failed to question whether both worlds were worth preserving. "I only recently discovered their existence," he said quietly. "Their mother and I were together in college. She left before I knew about the pregnancy." "And you didn't think this was information your fiancé should have?" Vanessa's voice rose slightly, causing nearby conversations to pause again. "I was processing it myself. I'm still processing it." Senator Wells placed a restraining hand on his daughter's arm. "Let's move this conversation to my study. Now." Blake followed them through the crowded ballroom. He caught his reflection in a gilded mirror. For the first time in years, he questioned who was staring back at him and whether he recognized the man he had become. The headline in the Boston Herald screamed in bold type, "Wells' future son-in-law's secret family revealed." Below it, a paparazzi photo showed Blake with the triplets at the playground, alongside a formal engagement portrait of Blake and Vanessa from Boston Magazine. The contrast between the two images couldn't have been more stark. Blake tossed the newspaper onto his office desk and rubbed his temples. The week following his disastrous engagement party had been a blur of damage control meetings with the Wells family's PR team, tense negotiations with Vanessa, and frantic calls from his business partners concerned about the impact on their development projects. His executive assistant, Rachel, appeared in the doorway. "Mr. Whitman from Boston First Bank is on line 1. He's asking about the financing for the Seaport project." Blake nodded tiredly. "Tell him I'll call him back in an hour. And Ms. Mitchell is here to see you." Blake's head snapped up. "Olivia? Send her in immediately." Olivia entered his office looking uncomfortable among the sleek, minimalist furnishings. Her expression was a mixture of anger and concern. "How could you let this happen?" she demanded without preamble, slapping down another newspaper. This one featured a grainy photo of their apartment building with the caption, "Where Harrison's a secret family lives." "I'm sorry," Blake said, genuine remorse in his voice. "Someone at the party must have tipped off the press. The Wells family has enemies, people looking for any scandal. Reporters have been camped outside our building. The boys are scared and confused. Alexander asked if we did something wrong." The thought of his sons frightened sent a surge of protective anger through Blake. "Pack some bags. You're moving into my penthouse until this blows over." Olivia laughed incredulously. "Are you serious? That would only make things worse. I own a building in Cambridge with high security. There's a 3-bedroom unit vacant. You could move in today." Olivia shook her head. "That's not the solution, Blake. We can't just run away." "Then what? Do you suggest? Let the paparazzi harass our children?" "Our children," Olivia repeated softly. "At least that's progress." Blake's intercom buzzed again. "Mr. Harrison, Mr. Wells is on the other line. He says it's urgent." "Senator Wells," Blake corrected automatically. "Actually, it's Thomas Wells, his brother, the family attorney." Blake and Olivia exchanged glances. "Tell him I'll call back. He insists it's urgent. Something about a settlement offer." Blake's jaw tightened. "I'll take it in a moment." After his assistant left, he turned back to Olivia. "This is exactly what I was afraid of. They're treating this like a legal problem to be solved." "Isn't that how you'd normally approach it?" Olivia asked pointedly. "The Blake Harrison I knew in college became a master at cost-benefit analysis. What's the ROI on acknowledging your sons?" Her words stung because of their truth. The old Blake, the Blake of just 6 weeks ago, would have viewed this situation as a problem to be managed, a liability to be minimized. "That's not fair," he protested weakly. "Isn't it? You've spent the last 5 years building this persona, the self-made millionaire developer, the perfect partner for a political dynasty. Where exactly do 3-4-year-old boys fit into that narrative? Blake moved to the floor-to-ceiling windows of his office, looking out at the Boston skyline he had helped reshape with his developments. "I don't know," he admitted quietly. "But I do know I can't just write them a check and walk away." "Is that what the Wells family is suggesting?" "Among other things, they want me to sign a non-disclosure agreement, limit my contact with you and the boys to supervised visits, and agree to no public acknowledgement beyond a carefully worded statement about taking responsibility." "And Vanessa? What does she want?" Blake turned back to face Olivia. "To continue with the wedding as planned. She says we can incorporate the children into our lives gradually after the election cycle." "How generous," Olivia said sarcastically. "And what do you want, Blake?" The question hung in the air between them. For weeks, Blake had been reacting to the discovery of his sons, to Vanessa's demands, to the public relations crisis. He hadn't allowed himself to truly consider what he wanted. Before he could answer, his phone buzzed again with a text from Vanessa. "Daddy's team has prepared a statement. Approval needed ASAP." Blake opened the attached document and read it. Aloud, "Mr. Harrison acknowledges his past relationship with Ms. Mitchell and the children born from that relationship. He intends to fulfill his financial obligations to these children while focusing on his future with Ms. Wells. Both families ask for privacy during this time." "Charming," Olivia commented dryly. "They make the boys sound like an unfortunate accounting error." "I'm not signing this," Blake said firmly, surprising himself with the conviction in his voice. His desk phone began ringing again, but he ignored it. Instead, he walked to a credenza and pulled out a portfolio. "I've been working on something," he said, spreading architectural plans on his desk. "It's a mixed-use development in South Boston, near your apartment. Affordable housing units, a daycare center, community spaces, and small business incubators." Olivia looked at the plans with professional interest. She had studied architectural design before switching to graphic design when she became pregnant. "This is actually really good, thoughtful urban planning. I want to transform the neighborhood, not gentrify it," Blake explained, animation entering his voice for the first time. "Create opportunities without displacing families. It's the kind of project I dreamed about in college, before I became obsessed with luxury developments and maximum profit." "What does this have to do with our situation?" "Everything. I've been living someone else's version of success, chasing status and connections instead of doing work that matters." Blake ran a hand through his hair. "Meeting the boys has made me question everything." Olivia studied him carefully. "Blake, I didn't come here looking for some grand gesture or dramatic life change. I just want our sons to be safe and happy." "So do I," Blake said earnestly. "And I'm starting to realize I can't compartmentalize them as the South Boston part of my life while I continue building glass towers downtown. I need to integrate who I was with who I've become." Another text from Vanessa appeared. "Press. Conference scheduled for 5 p.m. Be there." Blake made a decision. He picked up his desk phone and dialed. "Rachel, cancel all my appointments for the rest of the day. And call Jason in legal. Tell him I need the trust paperwork we discussed." After hanging up, he turned to Olivia. "I'd like to take you somewhere." 40 minutes later, they pulled up to a brick townhouse in a quiet, tree-lined neighborhood in Brookline. The house was modest by Blake's current standards, but well-maintained, with a small front garden and a swing set visible in the backyard. "What is this place?" Olivia asked, as Blake led her up the front steps. "I bought it 3 weeks ago," he admitted, unlocking the door. "After our first Saturday with the boys." The interior was spacious and bright, with newly refinished hardwood floors and large windows. The downstairs featured an open floor plan with a modern kitchen that opened to a family room. Blake led Olivia through the house, showing her 3 bedrooms upstairs, including one large room perfect for the triplets to share. "You bought a house without telling me?" Olivia's voice was a mixture of confusion and something else Blake couldn't quite identify. "I bought a house because I was hoping someday." Blake struggled to articulate thoughts he had barely acknowledged to himself. The boys deserve a yard to play in and a quiet street where they can ride bikes. I know it's presumptuous, but I wanted to be prepared. Olivia walked to the kitchen, island running her fingers along the smooth marble surface. Prepared for what exactly? For whatever comes next, Blake said honestly. I don't have all the answers, Olivia. I just know that I want to be a real father to Alexander, Ethan, and Noah. Not a weekend visitor or a financial provider. A dad. Someone who's there for scraped knees and science projects and nightmares. And what about Vanessa, the Wells family? Your business empire? Olivia asked. I don't know, Blake admitted, but I'm starting to understand what really matters. His phone rang again, Vanessa's ringtone. Blake silenced it without looking. You can't ignore reality forever, Olivia said gently. Sooner or later, you have to make a choice. I know, Blake nodded, and I think I already have. They drove back to the city in contemplative silence. As they approached Olivia's apartment building, Blake noticed the news vans still parked outside. Let me get some things for the boys, Olivia said suddenly. We'll stay at my sister's in Somerville until this dies down. Blake felt a surge of relief. I'll come up with you. Inside the apartment, he helped Olivia pack essentials for the boys who were still at preschool. The modest apartment that had initially struck Blake as inadequate for his children now appeared differently to him, a home filled with evidence of love and care. Crayon drawings covered the refrigerator, educational toys were organized on low shelves, and family photos lined the walls. You've done an amazing job with them, Blake said, picking up a homemade book of alphabet letters the boys had created. I don't know if I've told you that. It hasn't been easy, Olivia admitted, but they're wonderful boys. They make every sacrifice worthwhile. As they finished packing, Blake's phone rang again, his business partner, Michael Chen. Blake, where the hell are you? The Wells family has reporters gathered for a statement. Your absence is making things worse. I'm not coming, Mike. What, Blake? This is your future. Senator Wells is furious and our investors are getting nervous. Tell them I'll issue my own statement tomorrow. What does that mean? Michael asked warily. It means I'm making my own decisions from now on. Blake ended the call and turned to Olivia. I need to go. There's something I have to do. The press conference? No, something more important. While Olivia went to pick up the boys from preschool through a back entrance to avoid reporters, Blake drove to his penthouse. There he found Vanessa waiting, dressed impeccably in a camera-ready outfit, her expression thunderous. Where have you been? The press is waiting. Daddy had to stall them. She noticed his casual clothes. Why aren't you dressed? The stylist. Left your suit on the bed. Blake took a deep breath. I'm not going, Vanessa. What are you talking about? Of course you're going. This is damage control 101. I'm not treating my children as damage that needs to be controlled, Blake said, firmly. They're my sons and I'm proud of them. Vanessa's expression hardened. This isn't about your pride, Blake. This is about my father's presidential campaign, about our future. That's just it, Blake said quietly. I'm not sure that future is right for me anymore. Because of some woman from your past? Because of children you didn't even know existed 6 weeks ago? Vanessa's voice rose incredulously. Because I've been living someone else's version of success, Blake explained, chasing status and connections instead of building something meaningful. What we have isn't meaningful, Vanessa demanded. Blake looked at the woman he had proposed to just a year ago. She was beautiful, ambitious, and perfectly suited to the life he had thought he wanted. But there was no warmth in her eyes now, only calculation and fury. We built a partnership, Vanessa, a strategic alliance, but I'm not sure we ever built a family. Vanessa's eyes narrowed. If you walk away now, my father will destroy you. Your business, your reputation, all gone. Blake felt a strange sense of calm settle over him. Maybe, but there are more important things than business deals and social standing. He placed the engagement ring on the coffee table between them. I'm sorry, Vanessa. You deserve someone who wants the same things you do. As he turned to leave, Vanessa called after him. They'll never accept you, those children. You're a stranger to them. Blake paused at the door. Then I have a lot of catching up to do. 6 months had passed since the day Blake Harrison walked away from the press conference that would have defined his sons as a footnote in his life. 6 months of restructuring his business, weathering the initial media storm, and most importantly, building relationships with 3 young boys who were gradually beginning to see him as more than just Mr. Blake. Early autumn sunlight filtered through the trees of the Brookline townhouse's backyard as Blake flipped pancakes on a portable griddle. The Triplets' 5th birthday party was in full swing, with a modest gathering of their preschool friends, Olivia's sister and her family, and a few of Blake's colleagues who had stood by him during his professional transition. "Daddy, Logan says he wants a dinosaur pancake too." Alexander tugged at Blake's sleeve, still getting used to calling him Daddy instead of Mr. Blake. The word sent the same thrill through Blake's heart as it had the first time one of the boys had used it 3 months ago. "Coming right. Up, buddy. Tell Logan I'm the pancake master." Across the yard, Olivia was organizing a scavenger hunt with the help of Noah, who had meticulously drawn the clue cards. She caught Blake's eye and smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes, in a way that had become increasingly common over the past months. They weren't a couple again, not formally, but they were undeniably partners, navigating co-parenting with growing harmony as they established new traditions in this house that was now home to all 4 of them, with Blake occupying the basement apartment they had renovated to give everyone appropriate space. "Need any help?" Michael Chen approached the pancake station, offering Blake a brief respite. "Thanks. Make sure you follow the pattern," Blake instructed, pointing to Noah's detailed dinosaur sketches that served as pancake templates. Michael chuckled. Who would have thought the terror of Boston real estate would be making dinosaur pancakes on a Saturday morning? "Life takes unexpected turns," Blake replied, watching Ethan carefully carrying drinks to the kids' table, his face a mask of concentration. "Speaking of which, the community development project is officially greenlit," Michael said, expertly flipping a pancake. "The city council unanimously approved the final permits yesterday." Blake's face lit up. The South Boston mixed-use development, his passion project, had finally cleared its last regulatory hurdle. What had begun as a sketch in his office that day with Olivia had evolved into his company's flagship project, redirecting Harrison Development's focus from luxury high-rises to thoughtful urban renewal. "That's fantastic news," Blake said. "We can break ground next month." "The investors are impressed with the projected returns," Michael added. "Turns out, community-minded development isn't just a feel-good slogan, it's actually good business. When we build what communities actually need, everyone wins," Blake replied, a philosophy that had become his company's new mission statement. The transition hadn't been painless. Several investors had pulled out when Blake publicly acknowledged his sons and ended his engagement to Vanessa Wells. The senator had made good on his threats, blocking Blake from certain city contracts and spreading whispers about his reliability. 2 major projects had fallen through in the aftermath, but others had stepped up. Michael had stood firmly by him, helping to reshape the company's direction. New investors, attracted to the innovative approach to urban development, had replaced those who left. And most surprisingly, Blake had discovered he didn't need the extravagant profit margins of luxury developments to feel successful. The work itself had become rewarding in ways his previous projects never had been. "Mr. Harrison?" A small voice interrupted his thoughts. Ethan stood beside him, unusually solemn for a birthday boy. "Can I ask you something important?" "Of course, buddy. What's on your mind?" Blake crouched down to his son's level. "Are you going to live with us forever now? Not just in the basement?" The question caught Blake off guard. He glanced across the yard at Olivia, who was looking their way with curiosity. "I'll always be close by," Blake answered carefully. "The basement apartment is my home now." Ethan considered this seriously. "But Alex says real families live together in the same house, not in basements." Blake felt his heart constrict. The boys had been seeing more traditional family structures at preschool and had begun asking increasingly complicated questions about their own situation. "Families come in all different shapes, Ethan," he explained gently. "The important thing is that we all love each other and take care of each other, not which rooms we sleep in." Ethan nodded slowly, processing this information. But you love Mommy, right? You look at her like Mr. Johnson looks at Mrs. Johnson. At school, and they're married. Blake felt his face grow warm. It was true that his feelings for Olivia had been evolving over the months of co-parenting. Her strength, creativity, and unwavering dedication to their sons had reawakened the admiration he'd felt for her in college. But they had been careful to keep their relationship focused on parenting, both wary of complicating an already complex situation. "Your mum is an amazing person," Blake said truthfully. "I respect her very much." Ethan rolled his eyes with surprising attitude for a 5-year-old. "That's not what I asked." Before Blake could formulate a more direct response, Noah's voice rang out across the yard. "Time for the scavenger hunt." The children raced toward Olivia, who was holding a basket of clue cards. Blake watched her patient excitement as she explained the rules, struck again by how naturally parenting came to her. The afternoon progressed with cake, presents, and games. As the party wound down and guests began to leave, Blake found himself collecting wrapping paper alongside Olivia. "Ethan asked me an interesting question earlier," he said casually. "Oh? He's full of those lately," Olivia replied, folding a gift bag for reuse. "He wanted to know if I was going to live in the basement forever, or if I was going to live with all of you like a real family." Olivia's hands stilled. "What did you tell him?" "That families come in different forms, and ours is perfect just the way it is." Blake paused, gathering courage. "But it got me thinking." Before he could continue, Noah appeared between them, clutching his inhaler. "My chest feels tight," he said quietly. The familiar panic rose in Blake's throat. Noah's asthma, though usually mild, had sent them to the emergency room twice in recent months. The condition had turned out to be genetic, inherited from Blake, who had experienced similar symptoms as a child. "Inside, buddy," Olivia said calmly, guiding Noah toward the house. Blake followed with the inhaler already prepared. 20 minutes. Later, Noah was breathing easily again, curled up on the couch watching a movie with his brothers. Blake and Olivia retreated to the kitchen to finish cleaning up. "You were saying something before," Olivia prompted, loading the dishwasher. Blake leaned against the counter, suddenly uncertain. "These past 6 months, they've changed. Me being a father, watching you with the boys, building this life together, it's made me realize what I really want." Olivia closed the dishwasher and faced him. "And what is that, exactly?" "A real family, not just on weekends or for special occasions. I want movie nights and homework help and Sunday morning pancakes. I want to be there when they wake up from nightmares and when they lose their first teeth." "You have that, Blake," Olivia pointed out. "You're a wonderful father. The boys adore you." "It's not just about the boys," Blake admitted, his voice dropping lower. "It's about us too, these months living in the same house, raising our sons together. I've fallen in love with you all over again. Or maybe I never really stopped." Olivia's breath caught. "Blake, I know it's complicated," he continued quickly. "We're different people than we were in college. You have every reason to be cautious after everything that's happened. But I think we could build something amazing together, not just for the boys, but for ourselves too." Olivia was quiet for a long moment, her expression unreadable. "When you showed up at my door that day, I was terrified," she finally said. "Not just of losing our home, but of you disrupting the life I'd carefully built for the boys. I was afraid you'd either reject them completely or try to take over with your wealth and connections." Blake nodded, understanding her fear. "Instead, you surprised me," she continued. "You didn't throw money at the situation and disappear. You didn't fight me for control. You just showed up. Day after day, you showed up and did the work of being a father." "They're worth showing up for," Blake said simply. "And so are you." Olivia moved closer to him. "When I left all those years ago, I convinced myself I was doing the right thing, protecting you from a responsibility you weren't ready for, protecting myself from being resented, protecting the babies from a father who might see them as a burden." "I understand why you made that choice," Blake said. "I wasn't the man then that I hope I am now." "No, you weren't," Olivia agreed. "But neither was I the woman I am now. Parenthood changed me too." From the living room came the sound of childish laughter as the movie reached a funny scene. The domesticity of the moment, standing in their kitchen while their children laughed in the next room, felt both ordinary and profoundly significant. "I'm not suggesting we rush into anything," Blake clarified. "We can take it slow, date properly. This time. I just want a chance to see if what I'm feeling, what I think we're both feeling, could grow into something permanent." Olivia's smile was tentative but genuine. "I'd like that," she said softly. "The boys would like it too." "Alexander already has suggestions for our wedding," Blake admitted with a laugh. "He cornered me last week to insist that superheroes be involved somehow." "Is that so?" Olivia raised an eyebrow. "Planning a little far ahead, aren't you?" "I'm a developer," Blake shrugged. "Long-term planning is my specialty." Their laughter mingled, comfortable and genuine. As if on cue, 3 small bodies tumbled into the kitchen. "We're hungry again," Alexander announced dramatically. "The movie's over, and Noah says we can have more cake since it's still our birthday," Ethan explained. Noah, ever the observant, one looked between his parents with narrowed eyes. "Why are you standing so close together? Are you having a grown-up talk?" Blake and Olivia exchanged amused glances. "Yes, we were having a grown-up talk," Olivia confirmed. "About what?" "Alexander demanded. Blake knelt down to their level. "About how much we love you guys and how lucky we are to be a family." "A real family?" Ethan asked hopefully, remembering their earlier conversation. "The most real family there is," Blake assured him, his eyes meeting Olivia's over the boys' heads. Later that evening, after the triplets were finally asleep, excited from cake, presents, and the day's festivities, Blake and Olivia sat on the back porch, mugs of tea warming their hands against the autumn chill. "I have something to show you," Blake said, reaching for his laptop. "The final renders for the community center in the South Boston development." As he opened the architectural plans, Olivia leaned closer, her shoulder pressing companionably against his. "It's beautiful," she said, examining the design. "Modern, but welcoming." "We got the final approval yesterday," Blake told her. "Construction starts next month." "That's wonderful. I know how much this project means to you." Blake nodded. "It represents everything I want my company to stand for going forward. But there's one detail I wanted to show you specifically." He zoomed in on the building's name engraved above the entrance, the Mitchell Harrison Community Center. Olivia's eyes widened. "You're naming it after us?" "After our family," Blake corrected gently. "Whatever form that ultimately takes. It seemed fitting since this project was born the same day I learned about the boys. Both represent a new direction for my life." Olivia's fingers intertwined with his, a simple gesture that felt monumental. "From luxury condos to community centers," she mused, "quite a transformation." "The most valuable development I've ever undertaken," Blake replied, "has nothing to do with real estate. It's this, us the boys, the life we're building together." As they sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge above their backyard, Blake reflected on the winding path that had led him here. The ambitious college student, the driven businessman, the reluctant father, and now finally the man he was meant to be all along. His phone buzzed with a text, Michael, sharing news of a potential new investor for the South Boston project. Once such a message would have sent Blake racing back to his office regardless of the hour. Now he simply replied with a brief acknowledgement, promising to discuss it tomorrow. Some things couldn't wait, it was true, but he had learned which things those were, and they weren't business deals or investment opportunities. They were moments like this. Quiet evenings with Olivia, bedtime stories with his sons, family breakfasts on Sunday mornings. The real wealth, he had discovered, wasn't in his bank account or property portfolio. It was right here in this house they were slowly transforming into a home.